Hello, 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 everybody. Hope everyone's having a good evening. My name is Maui. This is the Dope. Excited to talk tonight. I'm a big TV fan. Always have been, always will be. And so I thought today it would be fun if we talked about what we thought of as the dopest television shows of all time. I have three different lists, my own and two other people's lists of their top five dopest television shows of all time. Whatever that criteria is, we'll talk a little bit about how we decided what our favorites are before we will unveil our lists. I have a ton of honorable mentions as well that I won't go into detail about, but I'll list off at the end. So excited about that. Joining me tonight, as she does almost every week, and she's with her lovely partner. I have Stephanie and Abby. Stephanie, Abby, how you doing?
Hi, we're good.
All right. That was strangely in sync. I like it. And we also have Sir Alex Albrecht. Alex, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. Oddly enough, this is not on my list, but I wanted to rep it anyway.
I don't know that I was aware that you were a Whovian.
I've got the shirt, the blanket. I am sitting at the 10th Doctor, his jacket.
Yo, that's awesome.
I love it. Yeah, I'm sure that'll come up at some point in this broadcast.
But I'm ready. I want to gush and love and not be critical and just talk about the history of television and culture.
I don't like that view. Let's do that view. Yes, absolutely. Me too. Yeah, and I will say, like, we're not here to crap on each other's picks. We're just here to like love on television and the
celebrate
shows
it.
that we love. Celebrate it, indeed. So I'm curious, what was everyone's criteria for this? Was it things that you love? Is it things that you think are technically like expertly made? Shows that, guilty pleasures, like what made it on your list? I'm curious. Let's start with Alex.
My list, like I mentioned, I love the history of television, and I feel that especially right now with so many different streaming things coming at you, so much variety, so much content, that it's easy to lose focus on the building blocks and foundation that current television. Like, I could gush about Breaking Bad and The Sopranos and things that are considered the greatest of all time, but I wanted to think back on the days of future past.
That's a movie, not a TV show.
And kind of focus on that, on things that I think still deserve love and still stand up to today.
Mm-hmm.
Against
I love that.
Products that are being put out. So
that's fun. I like that.
My list is in chronological order. So.
No, Abby, Stephanie. So Stephanie, I know like you are conceding your listing slot to your partner, Abby. So Abby, why don't you tell us what your criteria was for picking your 5 TV shows?
I mostly went with like my like comfort watches, the shows that I go back to and like rewatch over and over. The shows that like have gotten me through stuff, and that like, I mean, some of them aren't exactly like comforting things to watch, but it's just like stuff that I go back to constantly. And each of these things that I'm going to bring up, I've watched multiple times over and over. I kind of had a hard time because I love so much. And so I was like, should I do like just like the best, like the things that are like technically great? Should I do like there are shows that I've watched recently that, I love and I'm obsessed with, but like I've only watched them once because I've just watched them for the first time. So like, should I count those? And so I just decided just do the things that I go back to over and over. So that's how I decided.
Okay, I like that.
I am here for emotional support.
Stephanie, real quick, like you said, there's you would have had like 2 shows on your list. So I'm just curious what those 2 shows are.
What are they?
Yeah, so I made like a big list of all the shows that I'm like, yeah, these are good shows, but only 2 of them like really get me going. So that's how I knew Abby has a million. So I knew that she would be more passionate about them than me. But for me, Doctor Who, obviously, I should have worn a Doctor Who shirt. I feel like ashamed that I didn't. But Doctor Who's been with me since high school. It keeps going strong. I love how it's changing. I love the community.
Mm-hmm.
That's a different show.
Stop.
You're going to say that about all of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, Doctor Who is like my fallback show. I love it so much. I will always watch it, always enjoy it. And my second one, can you guys still hear us?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good, because we're frozen on our end. Is the Haunting series that Netflix has been putting out. The Haunting of Hill House and the Haunting of Bly Manor. Oh my God, it gets me going so much. I love the theatrical parts of it. I love the monologuing. I love the scripts. I love the camera, the camera work. What's it called? Cinematography. I love the characters. I love the actors. Like I could go on and on about that show. It's so beautifully made in every single aspect of it.
Okay. So those are 2 honorable mentions for us right there. I like both of those. All right, we're going to get into the list. All right, let's start with our number 5s. We'll say our number, our number 5s. If we overlap, then, we'll all like give our thoughts on it or whatever. And we'll kind of go freeform. We'll just see where it takes us. Abby, why don't you start us off? What's number 5 on your list?
So number 5 on my list is a show that, may not be technically great, especially not anymore. But and also not a very like comforting show, but one I go back to a lot. American Horror Story.
Okay.
Not comforting.
No, not it's not exactly the best thing to watch right before bed, but I've rewatched at least the first 3 seasons multiple times, and I brought DVDs to like show what I'm because I still collect DVDs. And like Roanoke is one of the like least popular, like critically hated. It's one of my favorite seasons. It's just campy, creepy fun, and I just have a lot of fun watching it. I love the weird characters. I mostly love the teasers that lead up to the actual seasons coming out, because they're actually scarier than like the actual series, and I go back and rewatch those all the time. They're so good. Yeah, it's just I love. They always have fun guest stars. Stevie Nicks is hi Deacon.
Stevie Nicks is on American Horror Story.
She's been on 2 seasons of it. Yeah, in season 3, Coven, it's about witches, and there's a witch who is.
It's actually pronounced Coven. No, sorry, that's a reference to a silly movie.
There's a witch in it who's like obsessed with Stevie Nicks, and like she dresses like her, she plays her music constantly, and they're trying to like get her to be part of this coven. And they use Stevie Nicks as a way. The Supreme like brings Stevie Nicks in, and she like performs for Misty. And in the show, Stevie is known as the White Witch. She's kind of known as in real life. Like people refer to her as that sometimes. So they use that in the show and like make her a witch in the show. And then they bring those witches back in a later season, and she reappears then, and she performs 7 Wonders in one season. And I can't remember what she performs in Apocalypse because I haven't rewatched it because it's terrible. But like they bring her in and she like performs songs for them. It's campy, it's fun, and I love Stevie Nicks. So
okay. I've never seen it. I take it back. I watched the first season. I thought it was good, but once it moved to the next season, it just didn't capture me.
It's the best, like technically, critically considered to be the best. But I think I returned to the first and third season the most.
I have a hard time getting into like anthology shows, like when they like change the story for the next season. Like I have a hard time connecting with the subsequent seasons. So like if it doesn't, I'm already attached to these other characters. It like bums me out when they're gone, because I kind of like living my life with those characters for like multiple years, so that when it ends, I can cry like a baby because I'm saying goodbye to old friends.
Yeah.
Alex, what's
It's one of
your
the
number?
Pluses with ADHD, it's constantly changing.
There you
So
go.
it keeps my attention.
Alex, what's your number? Alex, what's your number 5?
My number 5. So I'm gonna say my list from earliest, like starting at the earliest.
Okay.
And so the farthest back I got, I think the Twilight Zone. I have that.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one.
It kind of set the building blocks for just science fiction. I would say, I don't know, the surreal element. And it was perfectly done in these cool 20-minute stories. And not only these cool 20-minute stories, the concepts were just blasting imagination out every orifice. Like, who could think of "Will the Real Martian Please Stand Up" or the "What's on the Wing"? What's on the wing of the plane? And so I think the Twilight Zone, while in the 50s there are other groundbreaking sitcoms like The Honeymooners and the Dick Van Dyke Show, but like the Twilight Zone, I think has that everlasting appeal because it also hit on the social commentaries of the time. Like there's that one episode where dude wakes up and everybody looks like pigs or whatever, and he's still himself, but they think he's ugly. Like the themes really run deep.
That's a great one. To Serve Man.
Yes.
Is a good one too. Yeah.
Plus, it's like it was cool because they used the old vaudeville 1930s, 1940s stars to guest star, and so it's like you got Buster Keaton, you got Ed Wynn on these things, and then as well as like new actors that become screen legends later in their own right, of like William Shatner, or I think like, oh man, I'm blanking, but like.
There's a huge history of like fantastic guest stars on.
I mean, the fact that they've tried to remake it how many times over the years, but it still doesn't grasp that same. I don't know. It doesn't hit you as hard as that original.
Yeah, like the true essence of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
that's a good pick. That's a good pick. I like that you're like going back to the history of television with your list. I think I do a little bit, but I don't think as much. My first one, I'm trying to figure out which one I want to say first. I'm going to go with my my pick from across the pond, and it's not Doctor Who.
Boo!
I love Doctor Who.
I
love Doctor Who.
Across the pond, and so I want to know.
I love Doctor Who, but it is not Doctor Who in my top 5 because I don't watch Doctor Who as much as I watch this show. It is the Great British Bake Off.
Oh, of course.
I am obsessed with the Great British Bake Off. There was a few different shows I was thinking of. I was thinking of Doctor Who. I was thinking of Mighty Boosh. I was thinking of Life on Mars.
I love Life on Mars. That's what
amazing. It's so good. But Great British Baking Show, or Great British Bake Off as it's called in the UK, is my comfort show. I have watched it over and over and over and over, and the reason why is because unlike most of those like competition shows, it's not very competitive. Like everyone just like loves on each other. So there's not very many moments of like actual like competitive like I'm gonna beat you, like F off, like that kind of like rubs me the wrong way. On this show, when someone like gets voted off, like they all hug and they're crying for each other, and and it's also like just the most British thing ever. Like every season, like there's this like a sweet like tweed gay man in a petticoat that like gardens and dotes on everybody, and they do stuff like when I think it was Louis always wore Hawaiian shirts, and when Louis got voted off, everyone wore a Hawaiian shirt. He gave everyone a Hawaiian shirt, and so like the next week they were all wearing the Hawaiian shirts in honor of Louis.
So great.
Louis is one of my favorite competitors. He actually passed away a couple years ago from cancer. But so many of them have gone on to become like celebrity chefs, or celebrity bakers in the UK as well. And they keep reinventing it as people leave the show. The OG Mel and Sue, Paul and Mary crew, when all three of them leave, then Prue comes in, and Noel Fielding and Sandy come in. It's fantastic. And then Sandy just got replaced with Matt. I can't remember his last name.
Yeah,
I can't remember his last name, but he's a famous UK comedian. But it's just like the most wholesome thing, and so that's my number 5. Abby, number 4.
this was a great first round by everybody.
Yes, golf claps all around.
My number 4 is the show that I tend to watch like after I watch American Horror Story, if I'm like watching it late at night, or after I wake up at 2:30 at a very scary scene in The Fourth Kind when I accidentally fall asleep during a movie like that, which is a true story. New Girl. It's a sitcom series about Zooey Deschanel moving in with 3 weird guys. It's hilarious. It's crazy, and it has given us one of the best characters in a sitcom with Winston Bishop and
Winnie the Bish
and his cat, of course. Can't forget Ferguson. It makes me happy. It's the thing that I go to when I watch something scary and I don't want to go to sleep right after watching something scary. It's when I'm having a bad day, I'll watch my favorite episodes. Yeah, it's like the ultimate comfort show for me.
I love that choice. That's a fun show, and the first season is very different than what it becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like it's with a lot of like the more modern like sitcoms, I feel like they start off more cynical and then like lean really hard into love.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec, The Office, like both of those kind of did the same thing too, where like they started off kind of like they don't seem to like each other very much, but then they realize they like each other. Like the writers realize
won't they kind of situation.
Yeah.
One of the classic TV tropes, like.
Yeah.
All right, Alex, number 4.
Number 4 is my across the pond pick. We're clocking in at the late 60s, but you really couldn't see comedy in a different way after Monty Python's Flying Circus hit the airwaves. It totally threw you think of a joke and it just like turned comedy upside down from there on out, especially in the TV format. Like you couldn't have SNL, The Kids in the Hall, The Whitest Kids You Know. Any comedy on television was affected by Monty Python. And it was really hard to be like, all right, what sketch television show or like British thing am I going to put in here? Because also like Fawlty Towers and Saturday Night Live are
You can curse.
Oh, are cornerstones of TV, but I chose Python just because of how they rewrote everything. They threw the rule book out the window. I mean, who's going to write about a dead parrot? Who's going to write about a fish slapping song or the upper class twit of the year? And so Python to me was just it just kicked everything off and rewrote the books of comedy. So that's my number 4 pick.
I love that pick. I feel like New Kids in the Hall, Mr. Show, like when I think of like the shows that kind of carry like the DNA of like the weirdness that was Monty Python's Flying Circus, like those are kind of the things I think of. Mighty Boosh.
Yeah, especially Boosh. You mentioned Noel and Matt, and just like, oh, those guys probably watched that like growing up and all that.
It's funny, I actually like called that being on your list just from your comedic sensibility when we do readings. I figured that you were a big fan.
One of my favorite shows I did in college was Spamalot. Like they've conquered Broadway, they've conquered radio, they've conquered film. Like
absolutely. We got a couple comments in the chat. Becky said yes, Great British Bake Off. Eric said Life on Mars was awesome. Ashes to Ashes was even better. Yes, the two shows, like I think they go together so well.
They're
And
inseparable.
they're inseparable, and they give us the gift that is Gene Hunt. Maybe one of the best written television characters of all time. We should do like best characters of all time. Well, that'll be our next TV one, best television characters of all time. So we can talk about him and like Omar from The Wire. Your mom wants you to know that Stephanie, don't roll your eyes. Life on Mars stars John Sim, the master.
I knew that, mother. Thank you.
Well, she knows you don't know a lot about pop culture, so
I
you know you co-host the pop culture. And Eric says yes, love Monty Python.
And then yours, Maui, number 4.
My number 4. What I'm gonna go with next. I'm gonna go with my pick for the culture. Lovecraft Country. This is a new one. And I'm really like, I don't know that I've ever been so upset that a show gets canceled after its first season, and I don't understand why it got canceled. It was a huge hit. It's a critical darling. It got like all the award nominations. I am baffled that it is canceled after one season.
Make sense.
It was such an amazing genre-bending experience. It was important as a piece of art, as a piece of representation for my culture, for the diaspora, and it was so inventive. And the way that each episode took a different genre of horror and contextualized it.
Body horror episode is so good.
Yes. But the way it recontextualizes it and connects it to the feeling of racial terror in this country is just insane. The episode with Hippolyta, I Am,
that's so good.
It might be the best single episode of television I've ever watched in my life. It's definitely up there in like the greatest episodes of all time in my head. I can't think of anything that I didn't like about it. It is a perfect season in my eyes, and so that is my number 4. All right, number 3. Abby.
I beg her not to watch this one. She won't listen.
This is one that I kind of forgot about for a while, and then rewatched it last year, and have constantly had to like stop myself from rewatching my favorite season again and again ever since. Also, again, not a like technically great show, but MTV's Teen Wolf.
I have heard really good things about that show.
The first 3 seasons are fantastic, especially if they kind of split the seasons sometimes. Season 3B, which is the one that I am holding, it is one of the best. Like, season 3 in general is so good, but the second half is brilliant. It really solidifies that Dylan O'Brien is like one of the greatest young actors in Hollywood. I love him. He plays the like goofy best friend, and then like he ends up kind of going dark in season 3, and they do it so well. He's so good. And it's genuine. This season is genuinely scary sometimes too. It's also heartbreaking. This was like one of the times that I remember clearly in high school, just like being sad for like a week when one of my favorite characters died. And I'm still like, when I rewatched it, I still like cried for like 2 days when I thought about it. Like, it was heartbreaking. And this year was the 10-year anniversary of the premiere of the series, so I couldn't forget it for this anyway. You know, it's yeah, I love the show.
Yeah, love it.
Love it. Bring it on. Come on. Was Tyler Hoechlin in that show?
Yes,
Right.
he is.
Is he the main character, or
No, but so the main character is Tyler Posey. He's this high school kid who ends up becoming a werewolf. That's not a spoiler. It happens in like the first 20 minutes of the show. Tyler Hoechlin's kind of the like creepy, broody guy in the background who's like, hey, don't tell anyone. Hey, you got to join my pack or else. And like really threatening and stuff. But in the end, he's like, he's one of the good guys. And like, he ends up being just kind of everyone also like, he's really like the most popular part of the most popular ship in the show. Everyone loved Derek, which is his character, and Styles, Dylan O'Brien's character. They didn't interact that much. I never really got that ship very much, but I was more of a Allison and Lydia person anyway. So, but yeah, he starts out kind of creepy guy in the background, ends up becoming one of the main characters, and he didn't end up leaving the show for the last season, I think. But yeah, he was a broody, creepy werewolf before he was Superman.
Okay. And before that, he was Tom Hanks' son in the film Road to Perdition.
I didn't know that. That's kind of hilarious.
Good story. He's fantastic in that film. Yeah. Yeah. Highly recommend that film, actually. All right. Also, my heart just broke because I realized that I had a list. I thought I narrowed it down to 5, but I made a mistake and listed 6.
Oh,
Which means I shouldn't have said my bottom one, so I have to take one out.
Whoops.
I think I'm gonna take this one out. Okay.
No, you're the host of the show. If you want to do,
if you want to do,
No, we got rules, man. We got rules.
We'll just have to do like honorable mentions. So
I'll do
bring it up.
Yeah, I'll put that in my honorable mention. Alex, what is your number 3?
Number 3, I think this one is pretty outside the box when it comes to when people think of the greatest television shows of all time. But I know, Maui, you definitely have been influenced by this. Like, I think everybody in this room have. When I say Sesame Street,
that's in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, just the cultural impact of everybody knows all the characters. Like, we grow up with this. It teaches people how to read, for heaven's sakes. Like, how could it not? There's Ella. Like, you're pointing to Ella right now. Like, the bringing education to children by way of television it's just brilliant. I was talking with my roommate about, like, what do I do? Like, is it Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or is it Sesame Street? Which one do I go with? And he brought up the point of, like, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood teaches wisdom, but Sesame Street teaches intelligence. If you want to break it down to D&D.
Yes.
And so I just think just the long running impact that it has just on the human brain for 40, 50 years, it's like, how could you not put it in the contention of like top 5, like top 10 of all time?
And can confirm the kids these days still love it and still watch it every single day. I've watched so much Sesame Street at my nanny jobs.
Exactly.
The biggest influences on Ella are Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, and Reading Rainbow.
Yeah. They're constantly, as well as just thinking of new segments that just catch on. It's like, my generation had like the Elmo show, and like I could sing all those songs from still now. Like, it's so great. Like, yeah.
Gosh, sometimes I still get the songs from Elmo and Grouchland stuck in my head.
All right. I can't believe I just crossed out this TV show to make sure that this had space. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you what I crossed out. I'm not going to really talk about it because I think it speaks for itself. But I crossed out All in the Family.
The Norman Mailer influence, like, oh.
I can't believe I just crossed that out.
Rest in peace.
But because I love it. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the most important shows on the planet.
Archie Bunker.
Archie Bunker is amazing. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yes, that's a good one.
That's one of the ones. I didn't count it just because I've only watched it once. That's a very good choice.
as much as I love All in the Family, Avatar: The Last Airbender is such an important show to me. If we're talking about other influences on Ella and like getting me into like wanting to create programming for youth, Avatar: The Last Airbender is definitely on that list. Also, me being a sci-fi fantasy nerd, the world building of it is so amazing and it's so deep. Like you can go so deep into the lore of the Avatar universe. I chose Avatar, not Korra, because I think Korra has a lot of writing issues due to them never knowing if they were going to have another season and whatnot. But the character work is amazing. The lessons that it teaches children are absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's just wonderful. I absolutely love it. Any other thoughts on Avatar before we move to our number 2 picks?
It holds up. Like it's not very old, but it's stood the test of a decade or two, and it's still funny. It's still enjoyable. Like me and Abby watched it, her for the first time over quarantine, and it's just good.
It also
over quarantine, I got my nieces into it, and now I think they have more Avatar stuff than I do.
It has such good character development too, like the progression of how the characters grow over time. It's so good, so well done. My favorite. It's not the most like popular one to reference, but I think the character growth and progression of Sokka is probably my favorite, because like he starts out just like he makes fun of his sister for like wanting to think for herself and do things, and then like in the end like he's still like goofy and silly, but like he has so much more respect for women, and
after he meets Suki, he learns how to respect women.
Yeah.
Like he has to get checked like hard, and he's like, "I'm sorry," but the change lasts, which is cool. Like when they learn lessons, they don't regress.
Yeah,
which I really appreciate.
Yeah, exactly. And I really appreciated that. Hi, Deacon.
All right, bud. What's your number 2 pick, Abs?
Oh, I thought you were talking to Deacon for a second.
Yes. No, I don't know if Deacon has one.
Deacon's favorite show is that show with the birds on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's like a cat channel. So my final 2 are like, they're like the 2 shows that like really, I had a really rough patch in college where I was just like really going through it. My dad got really sick, had some friend issues. It was a rough couple of years. So these last 2 shows are like the ones that like really got me through it, and I still go through them or still go back to them. So the first one I'm going to mention is Parks and Rec.
I'm so glad, because I took it off my list because I was hoping someone else would have it. Yes,
I love Parks and Rec so much. I for a long time was like, I don't like sitcoms. That's not for me. I just didn't like the like mean humor of a lot of sitcoms, and I love how like mostly they're a little mean to Jerry, but like mostly like positive. Everyone loves each other. They don't hate being around each other, and except
for Jerry.
Except for Jerry.
Yeah.
But Jerry still loves them all, which
But the cool thing that what the writers did that was so clever is that like they're all hitting on Jerry, but then like the more you learn about Jerry's life, you learn that like he has it better than all of them.
Yeah.
Right. And like when the doctor, like after he has his heart attack, and the doctor is like just talking to the camera and says, "That man has the largest penis I have ever seen." And it's just like
when they do make fun of him, instead of them punching down, they're punching up, and them more, and like it's this weird psychological endearment then.
Yeah. It also, I think, and I've seen complaints. I'm in like a Parks and Rec group on Facebook. I've seen complaints about it. I think it has one of the best series finales. I love the series finale so much. I think it does a good job of like showing us where all the characters end up.
Realistically.
Yeah, and it's just it's nice to have that closure where you know how things are going to go for them. You don't have to wonder, you know, what's going to happen to Jerry, for example. I think he has one of the best endings. You don't have to like sit and wonder, you know, I hope things end up okay for this character. Like you see that they all end up okay, and I love that.
Mm-hmm. Dies the most beloved mayor in Pawnee history.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh,
like lives to 100.
That finale is wonderful, but like a couple episodes before it, like what really resonates with me is when Leslie and Ron finally patch things up, and they play his favorite song, which is Buddy by Willie Nelson.
I cried.
And I cried so hard at that moment. Like that's such a beautiful moment. Also, like I really need like an actual like fully fledged Cones of Dunshire game.
Yes, right?
Absolutely.
You forgot about the cones.
Absolutely. Also, a lot of people complain about that episode with Ron and Leslie. But I think it's an interesting kind of realistic look at how people grow apart when they move on to other things, and that's just what happened, and they were able to, you know, fix it. But like that happens in life, and it's sad, but like it's not like unrealistic or out of character. Like it made sense.
Yeah.
I love Parks and Rec.
Yeah. Alex, you're number 2.
My number 2, so to represent this time, I wanted to go with MTV from 1980 to 1989, but I don't think that counts. Because you can't deny how important that was for that generation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going with one that is very dear to my heart. It's my favorite show of all time. It's Twin Peaks.
I knew it.
Yes! I was just saying, I forgot that on my runners-up list.
I will not forget Twin Peaks. I just watched Fire Walk with Me at the Music Box Theater last weekend. Like,
oh, cool.
Yeah. But, you know, we're going with all this light stuff. I mentioned Sesame Street. There was Parks and Rec. There was, Avatar. But Twin Peaks brought darkness to the forefront of television in likes that we have never seen before that. Like, with the entire, like, Black Lodge stuff. But in the core of it, you have a family drama. You have the Palmers and the entire heartbreak around the abusive cycles that Laura Palmer went into. And this isn't even like going around the major draw of what brought people in of who killed Laura Palmer. Like, and then you have like jaw-dropping, career-making performances from Kyle MacLachlan as Special Agent Dale Cooper.
Yes.
He still references Twin Peaks on his TikTok all the time.
Oh, his Instagram's just like coffee and pie all day. And so just Twin Peaks, it balances the humor and the joy thanks to David Lynch, who is a madman of an artist. Like nobody
Do you have a David Lynch impression?
Well, the thing about doing a David Lynch impression is you're going to do the same thing the entire time.
That was really good. That was
good. And the fact he went from movies with Blue Velvet, The Elephant Man, and all that, and decided to make this as a TV show, like, just shows the power of it. When it originally was supposed to just be a soap opera send-off, like, parody. Like, they even have traces of that with the Invitation to Love. Like, think of the dynamics of the characters. I know I'm going long on this, but, like, you have Bobby in love with Donna, who is in love with James, who is in, like, how does this not influence, Teen Wolf or Riverdale or its repercussions and waves are still felt today, and as well as the cult following that it has. And so thank you for coming to my TED Talk on Twitter. And this isn't even mentioning the third season, which was groundbreaking on its own, when David Lynch decided to make an 18-hour movie and just chop it up into 18 pieces. So
we wouldn't have had X-Files, we wouldn't have had Lost, Riverdale. None of that would have happened without Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
The only reason that one made it on my honorable mentions because I haven't actually finished it. One of my favorite characters died and I stopped, and I just restarted watching it so I can actually finish it now. But yeah, no, I love I've watched most of it. I got about halfway through season 2.
You should stop there.
Yeah, so and that's why it's not on my list. Because I was trying to make sure I was putting things that I thought stayed consistently excellent from start to finish, and so anything that I felt kind of drops the ball later on, got docked points, which was hard for me. It was hard. That was hard for me, but it's still all enjoyable. I think you still get a really good time out of it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of having a good time comes from the peaks and valleys of quality. To some point where it's just oh God, we're gonna hit a bad episode. Well, we better buckle up. How does that not influence the experience you're having?
That's how I feel about season 2 of Lost.
Right.
I'm when I show people back in the day, when I would show people Lost for the first time and we get to season 2, I'm okay, shit's about to get really dumb for a while.
And everybody has a good time because you're expecting it to be bad. Granted, I would have probably hated this show if I were watching it in real time in 1991. But
it was very frustrating. The first 3 episodes of the second season of Lost is the same span of time from 3 different perspectives from different groups of people, and it's just oh my God, I want to get out of this hour of time, please. It's so frustrating because they split things between the tail section and the front section, and it's just it's so stupid.
I have a Who Killed Laura Palmer t-shirt. I made the mistake of wearing it to work one day, and I wear an apron and another shirt over it, so you don't see it until I take that off. But I walked into work without my apron on. Someone saw it and was "Did you know her? Did they ever figure out what happened?"
It was Bob.
It's a TV show. And then after work, when I took my apron off and stuff, this guy was "So did they figure it out? Were you related to her?" And I was "No, it's Twin Peaks." He's "That's why she looked familiar."
Yeah, I have a shirt of the prom photo.
Yeah, that's what's on it. Yeah.
I will let Molly get to his second pick.
Number 2.
Listen to Laura Palmer by Bastille.
My number 2 is my pick for sitcom. These last 2 picks were the hardest because I was trying not to pick all the same type of show. I didn't want to just put 5 prestige shows. I wanted to put stuff from different walks. So I really wanted to represent a sitcom. Parks and Rec almost made it. The Good Place very nearly made it. But The Good Place is a little too recent.
Everybody Loves Raymond. We all know.
It is not Everybody Loves Raymond. It is, and this is actually 2 shows, but they're all within the same universe. And it spans 22 years of television, and that is Cheers / Frasier.
Great, yeah.
It is the perfect sitcom. And Cheers is already the perfect sitcom, and then Frasier ups the game even more, redefines what that perfection is.
Talk about the will they won't they dynamic. That's what Cheers is just they drive that.
It is intense too. They deal with some dark stuff on there's a whole sequence of Sam and Diane hitting each other
Right.
at the end of one of the seasons, and like you would never do that on television today. Like it's so intense, and then like he's an alcoholic. Oh, he's a recovering alcoholic,
Right.
and he
The
like
entire, like,
falls
supporting
off the wagon
Yeah, the
in
supporting
the
cast,
next
you
season.
just got to think about like the undertones of like Norm and Cliff, and just like these guys that are kind of sad if you think about it. Like,
Yeah, it's like there's like in like my favorite shows have like a healthy amount of darkness in it. Like the characters aren't just drawn as like happy-go-lucky. Like everyone on that show is struggling with a thing. But this is where they come to like get away from it and to feel like family. You know, it's like right there in the lyrics of the theme song, which is also one of the best theme songs of all time.
Yeah.
We will do an episode entirely devoted to theme songs. And the show, like usually when you lose a main cast member, like when you lose Diane Chambers halfway through that series, then you reinvent it with Kirstie Alley's character Rebecca, and it's still wonderful, right? Or you lose Coach Ernie Pantuso, you lose Coach and you bring in Woody, and it's still fantastic. Coach is amazing. Like I love Woody. Woody is hysterical, but like we wouldn't get Woody if we didn't have Coach first.
Right.
Like Woody's just doing the same thing as Coach except younger.
mm-hmm.
You know, one of my favorite bits in all of Cheers is when Cliff comes back from Florida, from vacationing in Florida, which is a thing that comes up for like at least 3 seasons after he goes to Florida. He keeps trying to tell people about his trip to Florida. It's a great running gag. He comes in, it's just Ernie or Coach, you know, and Coach is making a blended drink. And so every time Cliff tries to tell him about Florida, he hits the blender and drowns out the sound of Cliff talking. And he's getting Cliff's getting so frustrated, and then he takes Coach's tie, which is a clip-on, just rips it off his neck, puts it in the blender, turns the blender on, liquid goes everywhere, all over Coach. Coach just stands there, and the liquid's just dripping off of him. He starts laughing hysterically, and like Cliff looks at him curiously, and then Coach is going to say, "It's a Mai Tai, Cliffy, a Mai Tai. It's a Mai Tai." It's a perfect joke. It's a perfect joke. And that's why it's on my list at number 2. There you go. All right. Abby, number 1.
We knew this was going to come up eventually. Doctor Who.
What?
Like I said before, Parks and Rec, it got me through a rough time in college. I didn't get into it until about 2013. I want to say it was like literally the weekend leading up to the Bells of St. John. They were doing like a marathon or something. And so like I was like, okay, it's time. I've been seeing it on Tumblr. My friend's been pushing me to watch it. Fine. And just like immediately was obsessed.
The season 7 premiere?
Like 7.
7 part 2.
Yeah.
7 part 2, yeah.
Second half of season 7, yeah. And so they were doing a marathon. And so I really didn't start with the best episodes because it was the Almost People, Human Flesh, or what is that when it was? No.
After the Bells of St. John?
No, it was before in the marathon leading up to it. The Almost People,
yes,
that like 2 episode
Rebel
part,
Flesh.
Rebel Flesh. Not the best ones to start with, but like I was hooked. And then Vincent the Doctor was not long after that, and like that one like sealed the deal. And so like I got super into it. It got me through some rough stuff. I would come home and cry along with the girl who waited instead of crying about all the rough things that were happening. It means a lot to me. So Doctor Who had to be my number 1 pick. And the 11th
so
Doctor and the Pawns are my favorites. I love them.
I love Doctor Who. I love Doctor Who. It's been around since frickin' Kennedy was assassinated. That's alone is such an impressive achievement.
Everything.
And the thing is like even when I am frustrated with the writing or like some of the characters, Moffat
Oh my.
Or some of the characters, Clara.
Salad salad.
Valid.
Like I am like just like, yeah. But like the beauty of it is that it constantly reinvents itself.
Mhm.
Like if you're not happy with this one, it's going to
Give it a
regenerate
year or
eventually.
two.
Right. It will get stale, and then it will refresh, and you'll get a fresh perspective. It's such a brilliant device that I don't think they realized what they had created at the time. They created a perpetual television show that that never has to
You have
end.
to replace this guy who doesn't want to do this. Like,
Right.
let's create this dynamic. Oh, and then this
Mhm.
entire world building comes along with it. The Time Lords, Gallifrey, like.
And it's such a capturing concept, the idea of kind of getting away from the mundane everyday life of capitalism and going on these huge adventures. Like I was 15 when I first was 17 when I first started watching the show, like a teenager stuck in their hometown and just wants to run away with the doctor, it's so like fanciful, and I love Doctor Who so much.
We'll have to do an episode devoted to Doctor Who soon.
Yes!
That's been something I've been meaning to do for a
The
while.
pre-new stuff, like going back to like, Tom Baker and all those guys. Are just,
Yeah.
has
Peter Davison.
It's all good. It's all good.
Eric said, many of my favorites have dips in quality. Alias till season 3, Game of Thrones till about season 6, parts of the Arrowverse. I am trying to slog through the most recent 2 seasons of The Flash. And it is hard.
It's a slog.
It is hard. I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? But I will watch it because I'm a completist. But like, yes, Eric, Arrowverse really needs to do something. Yeah, Doctor Who, great choice, great number 1. All right, Sir Alex,
I guess
your number 1.
Mine it's my favorite thing that's come out in the last few years, and it ties into superheroes, and it's all about the rise of the new miniseries, but it's Watchmen. It's the new Watchmen. Y'all know what I'm talking about. And I don't know if I need to say anything more. It hits on it takes what Alan Moore made and just keeps running with it. I haven't formulated my thoughts fully still yet, but it's just so amazing. The performances, the twists and turns, the themes, and how it hits today. Especially using history and in a way, this roundabout way, educating, let's be real, white folk like me on things like Tulsa and the things
Let me tell you,
like that.
After that premiere episode, I wanted to throw all my social media devices out the window because I would like if I have to get one more private message from a white friend saying, I didn't know, man. When they find out that Tulsa actually happened, I'm like, oh my God. But I'm so glad you know now. All the black people, we already knew about that.
As it is as a television show, and it's like 8, I don't know if it's a full 10 miniseries, but of just like I said, the twists and turns of like, all right, is Dr. Manhattan going to show up? Oh, he's been, spoilers, 3, 2, 1 to 2 now. He's been here the whole time, just under the guise of Cal, like turns to be human, which is one of my favorite stories of all time. Of when you take an iconic figure and it chooses to be human, but then it has to wrestle with the conflict of, do I stay with this? Do I stay happy, or do I choose the greater good? Mm-hmm. Doctor Who did that. The Last Temptation of Christ storyline, Superman 2. And I don't know, it's a story that I can keep seeing over and over and over again, mm-hmm. and still love it, no matter how they do it. But Watchmen, especially Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias, like, how is that not the greatest casting choice of all time? Like,
I love that. And also when you realize that time is running differently in that storyline, that like every time we go back, it's been like a long time,
Yeah.
right? It's like years, it's like, oh, like all the realizations, and like it is one of the most expertly crafted television miniseries that I've ever seen. Like every frame is intentional.
Yeah.
Like you can like go through frame by frame of that show and find like things to chew on. Like there's overhead shot in the first episode that is showing like the minutes to midnight, right? Like when they're eating with Don Johnson's character.
Yeah, the sheriff.
Yeah. Also, best joke: a god walks into a bar. Like this is that title. It is perfect. So I was torn because like I said, I had like kind of like slots for certain types of shows. That was my alternate for Lovecraft Country.
Those
right?
I watched them kind of back to back, and so they're intertwined in my mind.
Yeah, they're both like expertly made. It's pretty insane.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So my number one. Sorry, I gotta respond to me real quick. My number one show. This was between like the Prestige. Like this was for me. This is the Prestige show level. Was my number one. I was torn between two shows, which I think are the two best shows of all time. The one I am not talking about, even though I do love it dearly, is The West Wing.
I thought for sure that would have been talked about tonight.
I was hoping that you would have it on your list. But as much as I love The West Wing, the dip in quality post season 4, right? When I'm talking about consistent excellence, I could think of nothing better than Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is the most thrilling, engaging show I have ever seen, and it's like in a genre that I don't really care about. Like I am a sci-fi fantasy nerd. Like I drug dramas are not my jam, right? Like I don't watch Narcos, I don't watch Ozark, I don't watch any of those type of shows really. But Breaking Bad was like just like the premise of like turning Mr. Phipps into Scarface, right? Like turning this like, watching a good man turn into like pure evil and challenging you to see like how long can you ride with this dude before you turn away from him. And it's crazy. That moment for me, by the way, is when he when he lets Jane die.
Yeah. Which
like
is
that's the moment,
because then they created this wonderful dynamic. Because like the more you get off the Walter White bandwagon, the more like, all right, I'm just gonna watch this for Jesse, who on his own just has this wonderful arc. Granted, he goes through a slog of shit to get there, but
yeah, it is amazing, and like the music drops, like the needle drops in it, are just all inspired. I never thought like a Marty Robbins tune would become a karaoke regular for me, but then I heard El Paso and I was just like, that's my jam now. that's my jam. It's perfect. The way he flows through like a ghost in the finale, like from like scene to scene, like there's so much going on there. When we talk about like intentional like shooting and like action, not words, right? Like just like being comfortable with minutes of silence and letting in using other things besides just telling you what's happening dictate the story. Just like watching things unfold in tense silence. Like they're so audacious in their storytelling on that show, and in same thing with Better Call Saul. Like it continues into that because it's like all the same crew. Like they just love that world so much, and I could just live in it forever. Like just keep giving me stories from other characters in the Breaking Bad universe until the time, please.
I never actually finished it. It's one I keep meaning to go back to. but it's also I've only been doing like light stuff lately, you know, like except I just restarted watching Twin Peaks. That might be what is maybe helping me shift into where I can finally rewatch that. Because I got most of the way through it, but then, you know, college. But I will say, like, I do very clearly remember just like Gus was such a great like villain character.
Oh, Gustavo Fring.
He was so good.
He's so
terrifying.
well-rounded, though. Like, you understand everything with that flashback of when he's at the pool with in the past with the other kingpin, and just like his entire revenge plot. And then he's just so meticulous. You know, he's right. He's actually right.
Such a well-written character.
Really good villain.
Like,
and when you like think like you always think, oh, how's Walter gonna get out of this when he just like finds a way out, like he like figures a way out, and then when you finally think, oh, he got away with, like he did it, he crossed the finish line, and like, and the beauty of like the downfall of him is his brother-in-law like on the toilet flipping through shit to read in the bathroom, finding that book, like that moment is so insane.
The airtight story plots where there is no thread left just hanging loose, like everything connects to that. You know, if he didn't get the book from the scientist guy they killed in the 4th season, I can't remember.
Gail Bedecker.
Gil. If they didn't kill
Gail Bedecker. Yep.
If Gale didn't come along in the 4th season, he would have never gotten that book. If he didn't get that book, he would have never gotten found out. And just the dominoes are perfectly laid out, and just one thing leads to another. And so when you know, Walter does find his way out of situations, you're like, oh right, I should have seen that coming most of the time. Like, of course, why didn't I remember that piece of information from seasons past?
Like, everything is a Chekhov's gun that will come back eventually. Like, nothing is like just there.
Even if they didn't mean to at the time when they filmed it, like, oh, let's use this. Like, that's the and it didn't overstay its welcome. Like,
no, perfect
amount of seasons and boom, we're done.
Perfect amount of episodes, perfect finale. Loved the little coda with El Camino. It is awesome. All right, those are our lists. I love those lists. Those are great. All right, rapid fire. Abby, not too much explanation, but just throw out some of your honorable mentions.
I want to do this too.
Yeah. Just throw out some honorable mentions.
Xena.
Oh, nice.
We already mentioned The Good Place, but also Superstore. I got really into that recently. WandaVision. Good Omens.
Yeah.
Good Omens.
Good Omens.
Bob's Burgers.
Bob's Burgers.
And I'm really into Community right now. So that one almost inched on there. I want to say that's probably about it for me. And The Dead Files. If we're talking like comfort shows, it's a reality show about like ghosts. So fun. So bizarre. So fun. Yeah, those were my honorable mentions.
Okay. Alex?
All right, just gonna stream of conscious this one. The Simpsons, Mad Men. We got The X-Files, Mary Tyler Moore, the Carol Burnett Show, 60 Minutes. Like, there's so many, like, especially now. The Americans, The IT Crowd, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, What We Do in the Shadows.
That's on my list of things to watch.
Like, all this class.
You'll like it.
6 Feet Under was going to be on my list.
Maybe the best finale episode of all time.
The complete opposite of Parks and Rec.
Yeah. The whole convention of seeing how all the main characters die is just beautiful.
Yes, so 6 Feet Under, definitely one of my favorites. But.
Let me do it.
Love
Larry.
that.
Let me do it. This is my list. I feel very passionate about like a handful. Okay, so Bob's Burgers, Phineas and Ferb, best cartoon of my childhood. Pushing Daisies should have gotten more seasons. Firefly, a lot of people would put Firefly in their top 5. The Good Place, Broadchurch, David Tennant. Oh my God, Good Omens. And I'm trying to hack my way through Pokemon right now. There's like 23 seasons, over 1,000 episodes, but I'm really enjoying it.
Are you still in Johto?
Yep.
There's a
JoJo's
lot.
like 3 or 4 seasons long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Seinfeld.
You said Pushing Daisies. If you like Pushing Daisies, watch Brian Fuller's previous show to that, Dead Like Me.
I've heard that one's really
Oh, Hannibal. Hannibal
It's
should have been.
fantastic.
Hannibal,
Speaking of Brian Fuller.
first season of American Gods.
All right, my honorable mentions: The Good Place, as we mentioned, Scrubs, Quantum Leap, maybe my favorite science fiction show, even more than Doctor Who. It's basically Doctor Who, but,
Original.
The Wire, The West Wing, Jeopardy, Doctor Who, Lost, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers. This is a recent one. Like, I'm not quite done with it, but Friday Night Lights, I am obsessed with it right now. I can't stop watching it. Deadwood, it is Shakespeare in the Wild West, but with lots of cursing and calling people the C word. Star Trek: The Next Generation, my favorite of the Star Treks. Game of Thrones, All in the Family, which I crossed off my list. Mad Men, and Ted Lasso, which I have watched the first season of Ted Lasso maybe 6 times already since it in the second season's not done yet. I've watched the first season 6 times. So
that's South Park and Futurama as well.
Futurama, we could just do an episode about the top 10 Futurama episodes, the ones that make you ugly cry.
That one,
like Jurassic Bark,
the Luck
of the Fryish. Oh,
wow.
Yeah. Better than The Simpsons, in my opinion. I think Futurama is a better show than The Simpsons.
It's smarter. It's definitely a lot smarter.
Yeah. All right, so that's our show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Check out Friday. Next episode of Cantina Talk is going to be all about, it's a deep dive into the rise of Skywalker. We're going through all the Star Wars films, starting from our lowest rated. Watch our tier list first, and you'll see our tier list. So Rise of Skywalker is at the bottom, so we're starting there. Spoiler warning, we don't have a lot of good things to say about it. But check it out. Also, real quick, Mike said he actually likes Better Call Saul better than Breaking Bad, but that whole world that Vince Gilligan created is wonderful. Mike also threw out his favorites: Friday Night Lights, Friends, Community, Batman the Animated Series. That should have been in my honorable mentions. Yeah. That is an amazing show. Farscape, TNG, Black Sails, so many. Yeah, there's so many. We'll do this again and probably have a completely different set. We can niche it down to certain categories. But I love delving into TV. I'm enjoying the deep dives we're doing on Cantina Talk, so we'll probably do some deep dives into specific shows, like The West Wing, like Doctor Who. I think Doctor Who will be the first one that we do. We'll do a deep dive into that, talk about the various doctors, various companions and whatnot. So we'll probably talk doctors, companions, and showrunners will probably be the first Whovian conversations that we have. So be sure to check out that. Also, be sure to buy my book, Hi, I'm Ella, on everydaywithella.com. All right. I think that's it for us. If you are on Zooming the Movies, check out tomorrow the end of my virtual reading of the Captain America trilogy. So we're doing Civil War. So check that out as well. That's about it. Thanks, everybody. Stay dope. Peace.
Bye.